with all of this success that you've enjoyed now with this new council, why is it that you're not running for re-election?
I think I started off by saying that, I'm an accidental politician. In fact, when people use the term politician to me, I cringe a little bit. Like I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and a proud Colleyville resident. I love this town, and I see this town a certain way. I see it as an island community, more like a Highland Park or an Alamo Heights than a highly dense suburban town that's overdeveloped. And I think that we have a unique opportunity to protect that. That's why I got involved. And I also got involved because I saw a deeply closed political system that was absolutely being managed by the special interests that we discussed, and I didn't think that was right. But look, I'm not a politician, and so I feel like with most of the reforms that we've passed in the last year, I kind of did what I came to do. There's a new set of people in charge. There's a plan, to refresh the system so that more citizens can become involved. And I want us to stay on that path. But I also have an 18-year-old son who's at home for only a few more months. And one of the choices our family had to make was, did I want to run a competitive campaign while trying to, enjoy his last few months at home? And most people know I have a pretty demanding career. I run global sales and business development for a multi-billion-dollar software company, and it takes me a lot of foreign travel. And so balancing counsel in my home life and my business life has always been tough. But the one thing that we didn't want to do was we want to make the last few months about our son and not about me and running a political campaign. And I'm absolutely confident that the folks in this town will continue to make the right decisions about who we select as elected leaders now that they're better informed and the lights are on. And I'm just confident that we'll be able to sustain all of the momentum.
I'm sure that you're aware of the candidates, aware of their background, and aware of the political implications.
Colleyville politically is a very conservative town. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Most people in the area understand that quite well. It's reflected in how people vote in Republican primaries and general elections. It's actually fairly overwhelming. And interestingly, historically in this town, there's been a very it's a smaller but very active group of activist Democrats. We have, for example, in this town, one of the absolute leaders of the battleground Texas turned Texas Blue movement. And we have other folks who's, they're related to former Democratic and liberal state representatives and everything in between. As far as individual candidates go, it's no secret that I support George Dotson, who's worked very closely supporting me and some of the things that we've tried to accomplish in the past few years. George and I actually have very similar backgrounds in technology. We both worked for Ross Perot. We both worked for IBM. And George is currently our P&Z chairman. He's doing a fantastic job. So there's just no doubt that guy can, sustain what we've done and maintain the citizen first, citizen servant type of philosophy. He's running against the former mayor's stepson, who is, at my understanding, I know nothing about the guy, but he's a police officer, which I totally respect. Appreciate all those guys, and nobody, backs the blue more than the current city council does here. I think there are good questions, though, which is not a lot of people know him. He's not been involved in city politics, but even more importantly, and I think this is a really critical question, he doesn't appear to be a taxpayer of Colleyville. So I guess his qualifications are that he's the former mayor's stepson, but he's not a taxpayer. And the question, and I think it's a fair question, it's not a negative question, that residents have to ask themselves if they want somebody who is not a Colleyville property owner or taxpayer representing the taxpayers. I mean, that should be a problem for a lot of folks. Look, the last guy running in place for Mike Sexton, he fits that category of what we just described at the outset of this discussion, right? So he's a confirmed public Democrat, which is great, but it was the way that he got there that was interesting. So Mike filed to run very early in the process 3 months ago. He met with a lot of elected officials, state senators, state reps, myself, and convinced a lot of people, political consultants, that he was in fact a conservative Republican. knowing full well that it's a lot easier to get elected as a conservative Republican in the city of Colleyville than as a liberal Democrat. And ultimately, because people in his circle, alerted us to the fact that, in fact, his politics were quite different. And in fact, he's simply trying to confuse voters in order to get elected. And the other part of that is the same individuals disclosed to many, many people that for him, it's about establishing a political career and not so much even about the city of Colleyville or city council. So, to me, that's exactly the type of, opportunism that we're trying to eliminate from the process, not encourage more of. We spent a lot of time talking to a lot of different people, that were interested in running, for city council, and ultimately, Kathy Wheat stepped up. Kathy has been a citizen, for about 5 or 6 years now in Colleyville, so she brings a bit of a fresher perspective. She doesn't have any of the, the legacy political entanglements. She's the nicest person you'll ever want to meet, and she philosophically, in terms of, our vision for Colleyville, she's right in line with, everything that we're trying to do. At the end of the day, I'd really want to see Kathy sitting in my seat next year. That's one very important way, hopefully, to protect the legacy that, I spent a lot of personal energy on in the last 3 years with a lot of the citizens' help. And Kathy is running against John Bullock, who's a very well-known guy in town. He's also involved in, a number of different roles in the school district. And John is well regarded, personally. He, the one thing that I'll say that's, that strikes me is his number one campaign promise is to somehow, unify the city and, develop community spirit. Well, John is frankly one of the original Protect Colleyville PAC members. He funded them. He participated in their meetings. That was responsible for what's pretty well known in the community at this point, an anonymous mailer sent out by that group, including a number of city council people, former sitting city council people, that accused, and it's very public, so I have no problem talking about it openly, that accused Bobby Lindemuth of being a child molester and sexual predator. So this was a completely cowardly act, endemic of kind of the history of, highly personalized, just dirty politics practiced in this town for years that we're trying to break, with a lot of these charter amendment reforms. So on one hand, he's playing this game of, trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, but on the other hand, he's fully aligned, with those long-term incumbents and even financed a lot of those activities. So look, I'm going to remind people, because that is part of our past. It's part of our dark past. It's a past we don't want to go back to. And I don't care who's sitting across the table and smiling from you. You can't run away from it. It was completely false and completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable on its face. It is not what we're about in this town, and we should never, ever allow it to happen again. And so the people that promoted it, the people that paid for it, the people that were a part of it, every time they show up in election, I will be standing there to remind people of what they did and what they're about.